Let's get doing.
All right.
Fuck.
We are live. Hello, everyone. Well, we're waiting a few minutes for more people to come, and we'll get started.
Hello. Seb, do you see me?
Yeah. Yes, you're back. We're just
I
waiting a
cannot
few more
really hear you.
minutes.
I think this is when it went live. Suddenly it stops. I don't know. Is it?
Now
Related to
we're good.
China?
We're live. We're live. So good to go. So we're just waiting a few more minutes, and we'll get started. Tom.
Excellent.
Awesome. All right, we're having some technical issues. Our guest speaker just dropped, having some internet connections, but we're trying to sort it very soon. I think people keep coming in, so and we'll get started very, very soon. Thanks everyone for waiting.
Hello?
Yes, you're back, Dom.
Well, I'm back,
How are you,
but I don't know. I don't know for how long. And it's
what happened?
Is it that I don't know. I mean, is it that suddenly we are more people online, and that suddenly I'm not allowed to be here? I don't know.
No, I think it's connection problem. I don't think we have this before, but we'll have to keep it into consideration.
For sure. Anyway, look, if for some reason when we start and it stops, I'll always try to come back until you tell me to give up.
All right, but we're good. We're ready to then get started. So
okay, let's do that.
Again, thanks everyone for joining today. Very excited to have everyone here. I'm gonna get kicked off with a little introduction for about this webinar, so hosted by Green Story. And our two speakers, which is me, Sebastian, your host, and Dominique Simard, our main guest speaker.
Glad to be here.
Yes, super excited. So today we're going to be talking about sustainable luxury fashion in China, and I'm going to give some context as to why we also selected Dom to be our main speaker to do this fireside chat together. And a little bit about Green Story. So our vision is to enable every consumer in the world to ask, what's my impact? And at the core of what we do, we help fashion brands understand their environmental performance through life cycle assessments. And we then help them visualize that impact across all sales channels, while also offsetting their products' emissions. And about Dominic, I'm gonna get started straight with you, Dom. You know, you've lived in Shanghai for the last 18 years, and prior to that, you spent 2 years in Taipei. So that means that basically you graduated from Canada and you spent your time in China, correct?
Yeah, about it. Actually, altogether is 24 years, 20 in Shanghai, so we were about right. This year has been few more months that I've lived in Greater China than Canada. So I don't know if it makes me more Chinese, but yeah, so I've been here for a while. I live, speak, read, write decent Chinese. I've basically, look, for the past 18 years, what brought me a bit to that subject is for the past 18 years, I've been developing, promoting, managing design and fashion education at different levels. So pre-college, bachelor, for I'm being cut again. Are you there? Are you
yes,
still there?
yes.
Yeah, I'm back. And at Condé Nast, I was doing actually the continuous education. Today, I'm still involved in design education, but increasingly in fashion sustainability as a consultant, and also supporting different independent designer collaboration here in Shanghai.
That's excellent. So, because I mean, in the past, I mean, you worked for IFA Paris, fashion education for a long time, right? Like 7 years. You've been executive director of Condé Nast Center for Fashion and Design, so very involved in fashion education. And you've actually trained thousands of staff for leading companies like L'Oreal, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, Chanel, Segna, Zara. So that means when it comes to fashion design, fashion education, you have a really broad perspective of the ecosystem in China, and I think the lenses are the reason why I want to talk to you, basically.
Exactly, the overall fashion, luxury, design environment ecosystem in Shanghai, you could say I'm very, very familiar.
Absolutely, absolutely, and in that regards. That gives a little bit of context of why why we selected you. We had a conversation with Dom a few months ago, along with Akil, and we got into really interesting conversations about the market in general, and especially when it comes to sustainable luxury. I mean, sustainability is the hat that you've sort of put in the last few years. Now that you're working for some large companies over there in fashion. So that means you have that blend on now sustainability with a huge amount of fashion education background. And I want to get started with from your perspective, right? So how are consumers overall responding to all the changes in the luxury fashion space?
But actually, we could start with the pandemic. I mean, look, globally, we've been extremely impacted by the pandemic. In China, in a very different way, because I would say for more than a year now, we have a normal life compared to most of the world. Nevertheless, it has had an impact on what's happening here. And the first one is really clear, is Milan, Paris, London, New York, and other big cities are not saying the Chinese luxury or premium consumers anymore because they're not traveling. And the way I look at it today, they may not be traveling for still a while because we're not used to see basically any cases here in China. So before we dare to go back to Europe or North America as a pure tourist, just for going shopping, we're going to think.
All right. Again, it came back. The technical issue on the connection suddenly came back again. Sorry for that. We're gonna give a chance to Dominic to rejoin. As he said, he'll fearlessly continue trying.
Am I here?
There, you're back. Fearlessly continue trying. As long as you can come back, then we're good, Tom.
But look, is just
there you are. Yes. Very strange. Last few times that I've been having conversations with Dom, this didn't happen, and just for the webinar, unfortunately, it is happening. But that's technical issues that one sometimes has to deal with. And he mentioned that he will fearlessly continue trying. So then we'll definitely have this backwards and forwards. If I think everyone can hear him, and he's got enough a little bit, but if you cannot hear him at all, do let me know. Yes, can you hear me now? Now your volume is off. That's all. The sound, not sure if. No, I can't hear you yet. You can hear me, right? Yes, I cannot hear you. Almost there. You're back at least. Nope. I think something's off with the sound. Your side. All is connected. He's still trying, so he gets a lot of points for continuously keep on trying. We got some great questions in the meantime, and I was very much looking forward to have a two-way conversation on this one, because indeed sustainability is a very broad term, as Murtaz has mentioned. So how do you really define it in the luxury fashion space? So that is a very interesting question, and tied up with Hassan, what is a luxury in terms of sustainability? Thanks for the great questions. And in the meanwhile, do you know any sustainable brands from China? Alice also saying there is a lot of great sustainable brands in China. I think I'll have to mention a big list. So I can send you a specific list of many good brands out there, Ali. But let's say that the Chinese market is breaking through when it comes to sustainability, at least when it comes to the manufacturing level. At a manufacturing level, you're seeing suppliers working with wind power, solar power, very much innovating and definitely breaking through the sophistication. The sophistication in China is very much evolving. It's not what it used to be or what people's beliefs are. So that's why one of the interesting questions that I had in my mind was, has the Western world really woken up yet to all the developments happening, let's say, in China? And I think there's so much to discuss in that regards. So let me quickly see if Dominic is coming back. All right. This time he tried several times, Dom, but seems he is not able to rejoin. Or wait, almost there. Yeah, I almost thought that this would be the last time, Dom.
I felt so too. The thing is, I even don't see you guys. I've got the white screen entirely. You can see me or no?
I can hear you and I can see you actually as well.
Okay, well, I don't see anybody. I don't see you. I don't see myself, but I'll keep the phone as it is. I've got 32% power, but I can go on if you want.
Yeah. Let's pick it up from where we were. So it's good. It's good in that regards. Let's keep it going. Everyone's still here, okay. So I mentioned that you will fearlessly continue trying, and you have. So,
but so just to add, just to add that, and I think this is a fair question that some people may have in mind now. It's a bit related, but not entirely. Is to say, how can China aim to lead the world if actually sometimes the ecosystem just doesn't fit with the rest of the world? You know what I'm saying? And I think this is a bit potentially what we're dealing with right now. Anyway, we won't answer that question tonight. But let's go back to where I was, where basically the premium luxury travelers are stuck in China. And so the shopping is happening here. So basically, business, especially at the premium luxury level, has been booming here this year. Okay, booming. While the rest of the world is suffering, obviously, here, they've never had such numbers. Okay, which in a way, should excite the local team here? Yes and no, because suddenly the pressure to deliver even more is huge, and you see a lot of the major brands a bit complaining because they say, look, they've got more pressure, they've got higher target just because the rest of the world cannot be reaching them. So that makes it even more interesting. What is unique about this market, but has been enhanced with the pandemic, is definitely the digital side of it. Look, China has always been extremely digital, but how far e-commerce is going, actually, for example, just now it's 9:30 in the evening. 5 minutes ago, somebody rang at the door to deliver just a simple bag. And if I want to have something right now on the spot, they'll deliver in a half an hour or two. Right? This is something that the rest of the world cannot be wishing for. It's just impossible to deliver. So basically here, shopping is entirely online. Right? I never go to malls to buy stuff. Right? You go to malls, you go to stores for an experience. And this is why sometimes it's hard to believe, because, I mean, again, not that long ago, there was not much in terms of retail in this country. Nevertheless, today, you could say that some of the best experience are probably provided in this country. Just because if not, what's the point to take the time, take your car, you need to park just to go to buy something? No. You buy online, it's delivered to your place. If you're not happy, you send it back very easily, and you go to a store for the experience. What's really unique also, if you compare to the rest of the world, who's got the money here? The youngest. Okay, so the Generation Z, the millennials, are the one who's got the more money in their hand to spend. Well, in most of the West, unless there's been changes, overall, we're going to look at the 50 years old and above almost, right? Where the kids are out of home and suddenly you're still working and now you've got more money to spend. While here, no, actually, those are the kids who've got the money, obviously most likely provided by the family. But this is really what you see. And again, I'm not saying everybody in China has got this situation, but the numbers are so huge that it becomes key to measuring consumption, basically. Something that's quite new recently is the fact of being proud of China. Okay, so anybody under 40, and you could say even more for anybody under 25 and 30, they have only seen China on top, basically, right? They have seen all these changes. I mean, it's just amazing what we have been through. And so consequently, people are increasingly proud of the country, and consequently looking into what's being made locally, right? When it comes to local independent designers, especially, they want something unique, and consequently, but they look at what the young designers here are doing. So this is a really good timing to be a designer. We can talk about it later. And obviously, the last point is sustainability. So when it comes to sustainability, obviously, I am not saying that people, according to me, they're not yet as you guys are in Europe or in some part of North America. Nevertheless, as everything else, everything is changing here very fast. And in major urban centers, consumers are already demanding such type of products.
Absolutely. So that's all great points. And I want to dive deeper in the term of sustainability, because someone already asked a good question. Mortaza mentioned, sustainability is a broad term. So how do you define it in the luxury fashion space? Which I think it's a great question. And also tied up to that, how are Gen Z and millennials consumers driving sustainable luxury fashion? What do you think on those two, though?
But this doesn't really apply only to China. I think it's a bit more global. But one thing I would say is the advantages of the luxury product. You could say at least this is a product that you should be keeping for a while, right? Like, for example, you've got Patek Philippe, if I'm not wrong, who I've been saying you don't already own the watch. You just bring it to the next generation, right? And I think that's a concept that can ring strong in China because, again, you've got very strong family link. And that's something that can resonate very well compared to fast fashion, where you wear today and you potentially don't wear tomorrow. So in that sense, luxury brands are slightly better positioned. And, we also, nevertheless, they are still the first one, especially if you look into Kering Group, or looking into solutions in some ways and try to lead the path to the fashion pact, for example, right, that they've launched with President Macron 2 or 3 years ago. And actually, if you look at the fashion pact today, it's mostly made of Western brands. There's very few from China, but this is coming up. This is something that's going to change in the next couple of months, where you'll have progressively Chinese speakers joining the group. When it comes to the younger consumers, why are they looking into sustainable product? There's something that's really different from the rest of the world in a way. Here, people are going to think slightly more about themselves, not the bigger picture, at least for the moment, and consequently, anything that really affects them. So something that has been big in China overall, and I've lived it myself too, different in some cities, but still overall across the country, is air pollution. Air pollution was a big thing years ago. I was one of the first one probably to have an air purifier in my room. When we started to have a family, then we've had it across the apartment. And this is something that affects people. There's been amazing improvement, really, you cannot compare to years ago. Nevertheless, this is something that people remember. So anything that can cut carbon emission is something that people will be keen to support. Then the same thing with something that touches their skin, for example. And so organic material will be overall quite popular nowadays. And for that reason, people will feel slightly safer, right? Overall, there's something that has been changing in recent years, but especially in the last year and a half, everything around healthy lifestyle, wellness. There's been a major changes on how people live their daily life, basically, when it comes to what they're eating, for example. Right? There's amazing food in China. You can be, wherever you go, you'll eat like a king. Nevertheless, in some cases, you could wonder how healthy it is if you eat it like that every day. While today you'll see, tech guys basically eating salads. This is something that was impossible 15 years ago, 10 years ago even.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of changes happening, right? And that's one of the things that I also was wondering, and one of the questions that I wanted to say to you, right? Has the West woken up yet to, how big things are growing in design, in the luxury fashion space in China, and also around sustainability? What do you think in that regards, Tom?
So this is the first thing is, look, whatever industry, China is already playing a big role. Sometimes it takes time for the average person in the West to realize that, but wherever we are involved in, China will have a huge say, whatever it is. And one of the reasons it's, then you can look into how Chinese people are, but also I think there's a lot to do with the government, basically. Are you still hearing me? Because here I'm seeing new pages.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
We're still, yep. No, continue, yes.
Excellent. So I'll keep going. So the government has a huge impact. Right. So For example, when it comes to sustainability and other problems in general, like in the West, overall the picture has been what? Yeah, push it to the next government. The next guy will manage it. Well, here, no, it's them in power. They will have to fix it. And this is why when decisions are taken, it could have a huge impact. And so from being the worst polluter, which China still is today, nevertheless, not per capita and by far, nevertheless, as a country, it is the worst polluter. It is also at the same time the one looking for the most solution. And when it comes to wind power, solar power, electric car by so much. And consequently, when the decision is made, it can be implemented right away. So now in the last couple of weeks, I don't know if you have seen, but I've seen articles mentioning that, you know what, maybe it's China who's going to lead the sustainability revolution. And I've seen those articles in the West. So some people realize that actually, look, we have been talking about this for how long in the West? And yes, there's improvement, but let's be serious. I mean, we're far from there. Well, suddenly here, obviously they were not into that. They were looking at basic economic development of a developing country. But now at the stage where they are on, and maybe by the seriousness of the crisis, they are making changes. And there's a chance, actually, they're going to be leading that cause.
Yes, so there is so much happening, and I think you mentioned a lot of great things in that regards. I mean, even though China, like you mentioned, is one of the biggest polluters, they're also the ones looking into the most also sophistications to tackle all the different challenges happening with the climate, and also on the greener side as well. Even the governments, like you mentioned, are looking to carbon reductions. And looking to maybe even science-based targets in that regards. So there's a lot to be said in that aspect, and like we know, China does account for like almost 40% of worldwide textile exports. So that establishes, like also you mentioned before, that they're a big player and they will always have a big say on everything that is happening around when it comes to industries. Across the board, we can say. But in your experience, and if you were to look retrospectively, like in past, present, and future, what have you seen in terms of the evolution overall when it comes to fashion and sustainability in China?
If you look at the overall picture in industries, obviously, I mean, basically, we started to be aware of China in the 90s, basically with production made in China, basically, right? And it kept on growing, where today you mentioned 40%. But when you look at some countries in the West, without mentioning name, when they complain that it's all in China, actually often those factories are not in China already, they've left. They're in Southeast Asia or South Asia. And what's funny is, well, in the West, people still complain about those factories being away. Here, nobody's complaining. They just move on to something else. And the next step, so you've had the made in China. And then you could say early 2000, but I would say even after the Olympics and the World Expo, we move into the Chinese consumers, basically, right? That went around the world and became, I mean, look, most of the brand today, if there's no Chinese consumers, how many will survive, really? I think this is just reality. I think we still want to avoid that question, but it's just a fact. But today, I think what's fascinating is the design in China. And this obviously makes many people laugh overseas, right? Not only in fashion, but in other fields also. But to those, I would say really, it's coming up, okay? You just need to visit the top design school, fashion school in the West, in the UK and China, and in the US. And most of the top graduates are Chinese, okay? And just the numbers will make the difference, right? So you could say all of the well-known established designers here today in China all studied overseas, right? They didn't study that much here, although there's hundreds. I think there's 700 fashion schools in China. But there's still a lot to do, I think. But nevertheless, the design in China is happening, and not only in fashion, in every field, right? If you will look today at the electric cars coming up, people would be shocked. Okay, you would think it's Ferrari making them, Porsche making them, Benz making them. No, they're Chinese brands, right? They may have hired some designers from overseas to be involved, but they are purely Chinese brands, and that's going to come up overseas too. I mean, the same way in the 90s, we're a bit laughing at the Korean cars when they came into Canada. While today, I mean, some of the most popular brands in North America are Korean. But Korea is a small country. Korea is basically the size of a province in China. And so consequently, there will be brands in every field who will be going overseas. And again, because of consumer demand, but also because of the government imposing rules, they will have to be more sustainable. For example, I believe China, there may be some small countries looking into that, but China will be by far the first large country imposing traceability on the supply chain. I've read this more than once already. So think about it, a government imposing traceability on every industries in order to find out what's along the way. So this is how they can make things happen here.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great things that you mentioned along the lines there, and one of them was like, cheap factories are not in China anymore. They've moved to the other parts, because at the end of the day, there's so much sophistication happening over there with all the factories in China, and that's also something to point out. And I think I'm still finishing up watching American Factory in the process. A good documentary that keeps perspective right into the situation, and one that you mentioned to me, right?
Yeah.
So
it's really worth it.
I'll recommend everyone watching it, right? For everyone here today, they can jump onto American Factory basically on Netflix.
It's a great picture of the overall situation. It's not just to make everything perfect in China. It's far from it, right? There's problems like you have everywhere, but it's true in the West. You could say in recent years we have focused more on the problems happening in China than any positive aspect. And the American Factory is just eye-opening. And one of the fun moments is when you see the Chinese staff because they're bringing a Chinese factory in the US, and when you see the Chinese staff complaining that the American worker don't know how to work anymore. And basically, this is what we were saying of them 20 years ago. So now it's almost the other way around today.
Yes. I think, again, American Factory, everyone, you should definitely put that one to watch it this week or during the weekend when you have time. And all right, well, Tom, I want to sort of go into questions as well. So we had some questions from the audience where we can just have a two-way conversation, maybe in this last 10-15 minutes to cover them. And the main ones have been around defining sustainability in the luxury fashion space. So let's have a two-way conversation as to how do you define it? How would you say?
Sorry, I was cut for a sec. Can you repeat that?
Oh yeah, sorry. I was saying let's have a two-way conversation on how do we define sustainability in the luxury fashion space, let's say.
But I think the best way to look at it, as I was mentioning a bit earlier, is the quality of the materials being used in the luxury industry, right? Give them kind of a head start in a way, right? I mean, to me, I'm not saying there's no problem with them, because you could say, again, do we need all those products? I mean, right? If you're really honest, I mean, do we need all that stuff? Nevertheless, I would still say to me that the biggest issue has been created by fast fashion mostly, right? Where basically, I mean, you wear something a couple of times and then it's being thrown away. And maybe we're going toward that, right? You see, for example, the renting now of products. So do we need to own them? And I think obviously in the West, you guys are way ahead of that. Coming here in China, it's something totally new. You would hear most people telling you that, no way. Nevertheless, I live in a very trendy part of the city, and recently there's a secondhand store selling luxury product that is super hot right now. I don't know how's the business, but we talk about them a lot. But this is somebody look, come on, not that long ago, we would say it's impossible in this country. Why? Because if you don't have the money, you just buy fake ones. Well, now suddenly, it seems that there's a market for that too.
Absolutely. But it's also fair to say that, I mean, durability is always there. I mean, if you have in a luxury item, durability, you're looking at 20 plus years, right? So that's why right now I'm in conversations with companies that actually get those used luxury items and then resell them, right? So then you keep recirculating the same items, and at the end of the day, if one luxury item lands, it continuously ends up being used for 50 plus years, then that's already sustainability. But I think we're also looking at materials, right? So yes. for a lot of companies in China, they are looking at the sustainable materials as well, and as that's growing in general in fashion, in the fashion space. Of course, the luxury space has the R&D, the research and development to start slowly testing and growing into that direction. So of course, using organic fibers, recycled fibers, that's something that is slowly growing. But I think what have you seen in that regards, Tom? Because I think for the luxury space, they want your high durability. So that's why the testing is with recycled and organic materials. How long can an item, last, right?
I'm not an expert in that, but it's true. There's still a few questions when it becomes to vegan leather and things like this, where, right? Yes, it's sustainable as a product, but how long can you keep it compared to an original one? So that's definitely a question that needs to be answered. But I think with time, innovation will improve those. But to add to what you were saying is, a lot of that innovation will come from China once again. Why? Because there's a lot of cash. And so there's already that type of material being developed here in China. For example, there's a factory nearby Shanghai in a province nearby, and I will be meeting them soon. They're developing a material made of corn. And I've been investing a lot of money on it. And so, across the country, made of corn. So across the country, you've got right now a lot of people working on those. And since, again, all the facilities are here, so I think it's going to be quite easy for some of the foreign brands actually just to start using those materials right here in the factories that often they were using already.
Absolutely. And I think, moving on to some other questions as well that we're getting along the same lines, sustainability and transparency go hand in hand. So what are the steps that some manufacturers are taking to showcase that? And I think in that regards, when you look at factories out there, you have to understand how they're managing their energy grid. So it's definitely good when you're selecting suppliers and the factories that you're working with, asking good questions beforehand at the beginning of that stage if you can't. Of course, as you are in a large supply chain working for a very large company out there, you have to evolve that, right? So you're already working with suppliers you have to start by understanding what's their performance like, do some questions around how are they using wind, solar power, how are they recycling the water, how's the water consumption in that regards, the chemical usage, the waste, is there a way for you to understand all the different stages of the waste with the different suppliers that you work with if they are located in China? So there's a lot of things that you can sort of do to understand their environmental performance, and also by selecting the suppliers that are working with the right materials at the end of the day. So that's a bit covering on that, right?
And I totally agree with you. And again, this is it. What's interesting with here is the fact that the government would be imposing so much more than we are in the rest of the world, or most of it. And on top, just an interesting side of that is, so basically, look, you've got suppliers in China who have been providing sustainable materials to the rest of the world, the West, for years already. And now, since Chinese brands are looking into that, when you reach out to those suppliers, they're Chinese in China. When you reach out to those suppliers, they have no information in Chinese. It's only in English. And that's really funny. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because we don't want that in China. But I said, now actually you do. And this is why it's very interesting. So suddenly all of those Chinese suppliers, they need to be producing, information in Chinese.
Absolutely. But that's something that they definitely have to evolve. The market is pushing that. Let's just say in that regards.
And right now,
And right now, exactly. So some an interesting question here. So is there any suggested business models for sustainable luxury fashion And how do you see a sustainable luxury fashion business other than China? Hassan asked.
Other than China, wow, maybe you're more in a better position to answer that question. But the only thing I would add to what you were going to say is you cannot not be counting China, because if you don't count into China, to who are you going to sell? I mean, come on. Most of the brands today are selling to Chinese. It may not be sold in China, although right now it is. But if you're planning to have a luxury product without selling to Chinese travelers or Chinese people, I mean, how can that be a successful business plan? Really, I don't see anybody who would be willing to invest in such a product, such a project, because really right now and for years to come, they are the one driving the demand.
No, absolutely. Now, I guess overall, the market, what's happening is the actual understanding of wanting to know their environmental performance is getting pushed globally, I would say, and China is definitely sort of feeling that, and then they're leading now the charge in sort of more and more stepping into those grounds where there is more understanding in environmental performances and impacts out there, and companies want to start studying as well what's happening at the different tier levels of their supply chain. So there's a lot of evolution happening in that regards. But sort of moving to the next one, Jorge asked, do you think we will have something to offer to the Chinese fashion industry in the coming years in terms of know-how, digital platforms, connections in Europe?
But I'll pick on the digital platform, but very little, because when it comes to digital, China has decided and is big enough to have pretty much its own ecosystem. And you could say today, I think actually is not China anymore copying the West when it comes to digital, is mostly the West copying what's happening in China, okay? At every level. Okay? If you just look into WeChat, that most people have heard, I mean, really, I mean, we live out of WeChat. I mean, you can do this pretty much everything. For example, it's basically a cashless society already. I mean, I haven't touched my wallet in months, even probably more than a year now. Everything is paid through WeChat. And so in a way,
yeah.
there's nothing that compared to that yet. So is there still things then to bring into China? Obviously, I mean, in some ways, because yes, it's a country that it's, we're creating its own system. Nevertheless, we're still part of a global, and China is more and more integrated, nevertheless, in many ways to the rest of the world. And so, yeah, I mean, there's still younger brands, smaller brands who are trying to get into the country. It's not easy anymore, but there's different ways to do it. You don't need to be opening stores on the street anymore. You can just go online. I mean, there's different ways to do it. But definitely, it's not about anymore the rest of the world teaching China, that's for sure. And this is something I think it's hard to believe in some ways.
Yes. No, I think that you made a very good point in that regards. Hope that answers the question, Jorge. And Ali asked a very good question that I think this is going to take us a few minutes as well, because it's going on to the ethical side of things, right? That's part of the ethical standards, is part of sustainability, very important, crucial. So what about the labor conditions, right? Labor market conditions. Yes, Tom, can you hear me?
Hello. Hello.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Hello.
We can still hear you, Tom.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Lost the volume there. All right. Well, wrapping up, that was the last question. I think he made it basically to the end. So we'll come back on email to the last questions asked that we maybe could not cover together. And I think that was the last one in terms of ethics. China's paying a lot of attention in that regards to the ethics for all workers. I mean, we already heard so many stories, right? Chinese is always at the forefront of stories when it's out there, and we've heard so many bad stories when it comes to factories and the labor market over in China. But that's definitely evolving and changing. And of course, the stories of the past, the stories that you might have heard 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago are not the same today. So that's how rapid evolving the country is. And I think, well, hopefully everyone got to enjoy a good conversation with Dom. And for everyone that attended today, just the final announcement, we're gonna plant 10 trees on your behalf. So we'll be mentioning that via email later to you. You'll receive an email with that confirmation. But I want to thank you again. It's been great to have so many people across different continents and different time zones joining us today. So thank you so much for joining. And yes, until the next time.
Hi.
We're wrapping up, Dom. You came for the end. We just mentioned to everyone we're saying goodbye. And for everyone that attended, you can hear me?
Cool. Okay, anyway, hopefully it's been relevant, although the connection wasn't simple.
No, it worked out until the end. So, Dom, thanks so much. The final announcement, I mentioned that for all the attendees, we're going to plant 10 trees. So you didn't miss that a lot. And we'll cover the last few questions via email. So, Dom, thanks so much for joining today. Eh?
Thanks, Ed.
Talk soon.
Take care.
Bye.